Hauntings. Yay. Even though it's after Halloween, it's like November 3rd. Well, it's election day in the States, so it's a perfect time to talk about hauntings. Oh, I just wanted to all tell you that on Thursday, a new podcast is going to be coming out, and it's about hauntings. My first haunting, well, it's not my first haunting experience because I've had it my whole life. But if you put the word podcast down below, it's haunted. You're going to hear about my haunted apartment that I lived in and what I think hauntings are all about. So we're going to talk about some fun haunting stories today. I was looking at the post that some of you wrote and you talked about them moving things. They do that a lot. Lights turning on, electronics turning on, things appearing that shouldn't be there. Huh? Crazy stuff. So we're going to talk all about that. So I want to hear from you. Hi, Camille. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Sandra. I want to hear from you. Are you afraid to be in a haunted place? What do you think hauntings are? And remember to make sure you put podcast down below so that you can subscribe. My podcast is now on Apple. It's on Stitcher, Spotify, and Podbean. And it's called Who Can It Be Now? And it's from that Men at Work song, Who Can It Be Now? And if you listen to the lyrics of that song, you'll know exactly what happened to me. Hello, Debbie. Hi, Scott. So we're talking about hauntings because on Thursday, I share a story. On Thursday, my fifth episode of my podcast is going to come out. And it's all about the first apartment I lived in that was haunted. And how I didn't know I was a medium then. I knew I was kind of psychic, but I didn't know that. And it was kind of crazy, the stuff that went on. So it made me think of like all the haunting experiences. And then when I was reading all your posts, answers, and comments about hauntings, I started remembering more. So I can't wait to go back to my journals and remember all these things. So ghost, if you're a medium, right? And many of you are, if you're following me, you're probably a medium. Hello, Robert, your first live video. Hi, Lori. Hi, Carolee. Hi, Camille. I think I said hello to Paula. Okay, so if you're a medium and you have had these feelings ever since you were little, wherever you move, you're like a lighthouse. You're like a lighthouse to all the ghosts, and the spirits will come by and they'll just like come into your house if you don't know how to put protection on your house and to keep them out. So you want to be able to keep them out of your house because they can be a little bit annoying. They can shake your bed at night. They can mess around with electronics. They take things and sometimes they don't put them back, or other times they do. I was once doing a thing. I was playing with some reading stuff, and all of a sudden this big glob of stuff appeared in the bowl. So I can't remember what that's called. I should have looked it up before I came here. So I want to tell you this story. I'm going to tell you about another haunted story, not the story that I share in the podcast. Yeah, it's not that funny, Paula. Well, when you're dating and they're like, "You're a medium." Anyway, you have to listen to my podcast. So this is going to be a short story today because I'm pretty tired. I'm sure a lot of us are tired. So here's the story. So when I was working for MTV Networks, but I was freelancing, and they chartered a plane and took 150 contestants to. I can't remember we went to Finland, Rome, Paris, and London. Finland, Rome, Paris, and London. And it was my second time in Europe, second time in Italy. And I knew when I go to Europe, I'm extremely psychic. But this was it was for the year 2000. So it was Y2K. And I didn't really know I was a medium. I didn't know all this stuff, but crazy things were happening to me. And I get on this plane and we go to Finland. Not much happens in Finland for me, except that we meet reindeers and we go to the North Pole and meet Santa Claus and all this kind of stuff. Really cool stuff. Have a great time. 4 hours of daylight. All they could serve you was salmon and reindeer. It was a little kind of like, I was like, oh my God. We got on the plane and we're like, we're going to eat something different. And we're like, what do you have? Because it was a chartered plane. So I was in first class, everything, even though there were like a bunch of people. And they were like, we have reindeer or salmon. I was like, ugh. We had to wear these big snowsuits. Anyway, so we did that. So then we went to Rome and it started picking up there for me. And it was, I just get really, really psychic. I think it's because there's just so much energy. But it was when we went to Paris. I can't remember where I went. But when I went to Paris, the hotel was so friggin' haunted, I couldn't sleep. I would go into the bathroom and there would be blood all over the walls. That's all I would see. I couldn't sleep at night because I felt like something was in the bed with me, something was under the bed with me, something was shaking the bed. I would walk down the halls and I'd just see the word murder and I'd see blood everywhere. It was really insane. And I was just, the whole time I was there, I was just like biting my nails and I just could not sleep. And I thought it was just me. I didn't say anything to anyone because I didn't know I had these gifts. I didn't know what was going on. I thought, I'm just making this up. It's my imagination. I'm afraid of the dark. What's going on? So we go to England and it's continuing to happen, but not in the hotel so much. It's not as scary. Paris, for some reason, that hotel, there must have been shit that went down in that hotel that was nuts. And we go to London and I start talking about what was happening in Paris. And another person there was like, oh my goodness, me too. I couldn't sleep. That hotel was insane. There was evil. There was something bad in that hotel. There was something going on. So I felt like not so alone. I felt like, oh my goodness, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. So here I am in England. We're all sitting around a circle. We're drinking. And I look at this guy. He was with one of the bands, right? And he was working with the band. And I look at this guy across the table. And all of a sudden, I just get completely depressed. I'm like, this energy just takes over me and the sadness. And I'm like, you got something going on. And I didn't want to say anything else because I'm sitting here with people from MTV. I don't even know what's happening to me. I don't want to really share this, this weirdness that's going on. So I just stopped talking. I'm like, no, it's nothing. I'm fine. But he knew that I felt something. So he pulled me aside later on and he's like, what happened there? And I said, I don't know. I just looked at you and I got this incredible amount of sadness. I got this incredible amount of heartache. And I felt really incredibly just so sad. And he said, well, my mother died a month ago. That's empathic ability, guys. So I knew from that moment on and from other experiences that I had that you'll have to put in podcast to hear about that something strange was happening. My abilities were starting to open. So part of what goes on when you have these gifts when you're little, some of you may have not. Hi, Tim Curry. Some of you may have not had these gifts, but it doesn't matter because the dimensions are shifting, because the veils are thinner, because there's a lot of wackiness going on. These gifts will be awoken in you no matter what, wherever you are in your life. So whether you had it when you were little or didn't have it, doesn't really matter. Because to me, everybody is susceptible to this if you're interested in it. I honestly think that if you're gifted, if you're interested in a gift, you probably have that gift. So before I go into the other story, one of the first things I did as a medium when I started opening up to this and I started studying and then I started reading and I was really good. And then I started getting invited to do platform readings. And platform readings is when you're standing in front of a group of people and you read them. And I don't walk in the crowd and go, somebody lose their father here? That doesn't work for me. What I do is I go right up to the person that I'm going to talk to and I start reading them. So you do platform readings and you do all stuff, but I'm losing track of my story. Oh my goodness, where did it go? I'm tired today. How many people are tired today in the States? How many people are tired? I'm going to take notes because this is going to be one of my worst Facebook Lives ever. I can tell. I can feel it. You might as well just tune out now. But put the word podcast in so you can find out about my podcast because it's really, really important that we talk about hauntings. So, I know what I was going to tell you. Okay. So I was doing this platform reading and I was in Curves of all places. It was great. They invited me in and there were like 40 people. And I took questions and answers at the end. And this girl asked me if she was a medium. And I said, who am I to tell you you're not a medium? Who gives me that power? So what I'm trying to tell all of you is, hi, Lynn. Lynn, you don't want to be listening to this one because I did not organize my thoughts on this one. So when she said to me, asked me if she was a medium, and I said, who am I to tell you you're not a medium? It really struck me like how many times people go out there and they're looking for a medium or a psychic to tell them what gifts they have. Like I see this in my communities all the time in Membership for Your Soul or not in Soul Finder Academy, but more in Membership for Your Soul. People will be like, what's my gift? What should I study? And I don't mind telling them what to study. But my whole thing is if you're interested in clairvoyancy, repetitive symbols, if you're interested in empathic ability, picking up people's emotions, if you're interested in claircognizance, which is the knowing, I'll go through all the gifts if you really want to know. then you have that gift most likely, and you want to develop it. It's like a muscle that you build. It's like a language that you're learning. So you don't want to deny that part of yourself. You don't want to wait till somebody else tells you you have it. You want to just do it. This all happened to me in a way that was like, it just, you have to listen to the podcast to hear the stories, but it just opened up and it was crazy. And I just kept following it. So many of you are doing this. I see it. Now I see it. Now I'm going to follow it. Now I don't. And you don't want to do that. You want to follow it because it's going to take you to a really incredible, magical place. It's going to be incredible where you go. So this is a story that I share. I don't know if I want to share that story. I keep seeing orbs. Anybody else seeing orbs? Is that just me? I don't know. So anyway, I want to tell you more stories. But anyway, tell me about your hauntings. Tell me what you think a haunting is, because I talk about what a haunting is in my new podcast. I talk about it. So let's talk about, before we talk about the gifts, let's talk about what happens when a spirit comes into your house. When spirits come into your house, like I said, they can take things and hide them. They could shake your bed. They could turn on lights. They can turn on electronics. Cold air. You could feel cold air. That happened. I was once studying with a medium in a big group room, and the spirit came in. Everybody was like freezing. So it could be really cold air. You could feel them touch you. It's almost like a piece of hair is flying off, or they'll touch your arm. A piece of hair is flying. So the other thing they do is, and I don't know why they do this, it's really friggin' annoying. They will go to your back like this. So supposedly, when I was learning, if a spirit wanted to enter into your body, they would enter through the back here. So in the beginning, when I was opening up, I would sleep on my back because I didn't want anything entering in, and I didn't yet have the protection that I knew how to have in order for that to not happen. I have a spirit in my house right now, and this spirit just completely, he just comes up to my back, and I'm like, dude, back up. Get the fuck off my back. And that's the way it feels. It's really fascinating to me. I don't know why they do that. I don't know. Maybe they don't get like this. They definitely don't get the 6 feet social distancing right now. They're not getting that. And they don't get personal space. How many of you have had these experiences? So turning my TV on. So one day, this was all opening up for me. It was really interesting. I tell the story about the doors getting locked in rooms. You have to listen to my podcast, put podcast in, you'll learn about it. I was in my bedroom in just a G-string, just got out of the shower, and there was a TV on the table, and all of a sudden it went on, and it was a TV that hadn't worked in years. And I'm like, really, guys? Now? While I'm standing here like naked pretty much? You got to turn on the TV? And I went and I was like, how the frig did it even go on? It hasn't worked in years. And I went and got the remote. And of course, the remote didn't work because the TV didn't work. It was hidden in a drawer. So then I went over to the TV and I unplugged it. I was like, enough. I don't want that happening. So how many of you what kind of experiences have you had with spirits coming in and haunting you? Let's talk about something that came up recently, a membership for your soul, that I think is super important. Somebody was asking about studying mediumship and what they need to study. And I think a lot of people get confused. And I do a whole episode. Episode 4 is the difference between a medium and a psychic, and what I think a medium really is. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I definitely suggest you go to that episode. So what I was telling the student is, people don't realize that it's not about, they focus so much on speaking to the deceased person. They don't understand that you have to work on all your clairs. You have to work on all your clairs in order to communicate with the deceased person. If you watch Teresa Caputo, I haven't watched her in a long time, but she says she doesn't see them, she hears them, and she knows things, and I think she's empathic too. I don't quote me on that, but I remember her saying that. She also says she can't turn it off. I can. That was my deal. When this happened to me and it all opened up, I was like, there is no fucking way this is going to be on all the time. I'm not doing it. It's very annoying to have it on all the time. So you want to work on your clairs because you're going to communicate with your guides, with deceased loved ones through your clairs, through seeing them. I see them. I hear them. Another orb. I see them. I hear them. I feel them. Clairsentience is different than empathic ability. I talk about that in episode 5 that's coming out Thursday. I know claircognizance. I know. So I have all these gifts. You can too. I'm not any different than any of you. And they layer. So I could be seeing the spirit and feeling how they died right away. I could be seeing them and hearing their message to the person. I could be feeling their emotions and hearing what they want me to know about the emotions. My deceased people come in and they want to talk about your life. They don't really give a shit. They're fine on the other side. The chicken soup you gave them, they're like, thank you for that chicken soup. That came through in a reading once, I remember. It wasn't chicken soup, it was something else. It was like porridge or something weird. And I was like, look, your dad's really happy that you made him the oatmeal, but he's more concerned about your life. So it's really important that you do that. So let me go through your questions, but I want to say one other thing about this. And like I said, I'm usually more organized than this, but I'm tired today. I've decided I'm tired today. You know what? I'll just go to your things. And then as more stories come up, I will tell them. So let's see. Have you guys had hauntings? So Amy says, yes, my TV has been turning itself on a lot lately. So now I'm going to tell you what a haunting is, but you're going to have to listen to episode number 5. And I say it at the very end because we're going to talk more about hauntings. I have been working closely with a specific guide about what really happens when we die, what really goes on. And a long time ago, somebody asked me what I believed happened when we died. And I said, well, this is what I know today, but this could change tomorrow. So I don't know. So sometimes Amy's in my Soul Finder Academy program. Sometimes, Amy, too, when your energy is getting ramped up, which your energy is going to mess around with electronics as well. But how many of you, when you were starting to open up, your computer was breaking down or your phone was breaking or certain things were just breaking down constantly? You're going to hear all about my haunted apartment story in that episode. Yes, no personal space. I know, Paula, why? Why you got to be up on my grill like that? Like, I already know you're here. He hangs around in the kitchen, and I turn around and I'm like, hello, spirit. And I'm like, but you don't need to be up on my back like that. What the fuck? Personal space, please. I've had that, the feeling someone in my bed. Yeah, someone in your bed, not happening. How many times you have the feeling, oh, I have a really good clairvoyant one I haven't told you about. How many times you feel the impression they're sitting on the bed? I'm like, dude, they don't do this to me anymore because except for this one spirit who's allowed to be here because he knows I'm getting ready to tell his story. He's a famous Hollywood actor that was killed. So he's been around. He's been getting ready. But they will sit on your bed. Like, I don't allow this shit to happen anymore. There is like no way. I'm not the lighthouse. When I first moved into Sherman Oaks, I was like the lighthouse, the medium in town, and they were all up against the glass window like this, looking in at me. You gonna let us in? I'm like, no, I'm not letting you in. Get the fuck out of here. Another thing that happens too that was making me think about it. So clairvoyancy, I didn't teach this in the clairvoyant. You could see, you could look at like grain in a wood or floor. How many of you had this experience? Tell me below. I want to know. Where if you look at like a tile and you see a face, or you could look at a curtain and you see a symbol, like, and it's not in the curtain. So there was a curtain. I had a curtain over my mirror because, as we all know, you should not have a mirror. You should not be sleeping facing a mirror. So I had a mirror in my bedroom and I had a curtain over it. And there was a little boy there in that curtain, a little Dutch boy with a horn for the longest time. Even if I moved the curtain and readjusted it, he was always there. And I could look at the curtain and he would just pop out. So that's a form of clairvoyancy. It's like looking at a tiled floor and all of a sudden, like I forgot where that is, but there's a certain thing that I look at and I see a face. I always see a man's face in it. That's a form of clairvoyancy. When I first started opening up to my gifts and I didn't know what was happening, and this is when that girl went missing in the Caribbean, Natalie, can't remember her last name right now. I have to go back to my journals. I need to spend like a good afternoon going back and remembering all the stuff that happened because you forget. But I looked over my bed and there was a blonde-headed girl, and I don't watch the news, a blonde-headed girl in water, wrapped in plastic, dead by the side of my bed. And I was like, oh my goodness, who the fuck is that? You know, what are you doing here? And then like a day later, I found out the news, because I don't watch the news, that it was Natalie, I can't remember her name. She went missing, and they were still searching for her. And I knew that was who came into my bedroom. I knew that she was dead. Another story is a guy who went after his dog. He was on a camping trip, and he went after his dog on the camping trip, and he died. And they assumed that he fell from a tree. That's all I knew. I knew he went missing. And I had a dream, and he came to me and he said, I have two sisters. I was killed by the guy who was on the camping trip with me, and I did not accidentally die. And I looked him up then, and he had two sisters, and he was actually away, I think there was an affair or something going on. He told me the whole thing. And I contacted a friend of mine who was a cop at the time, and I said, he came to me, I know he was killed, and I know the guy who was camping with him was killed. And I told her the specifics about the thing, and she said, yeah, we think he was killed too, but we don't have any proof, so we can't do anything about it. And I'm like, well, he came to me and he told me that. So I actually like murder cases. I haven't been able to dive back into them. I find them really intriguing and fun to work with, because you uncover all these things that you can't possibly know. And then when they get confirmed, it's really cool. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Tina, you have a question, so I'll get to that. No, they don't get personal space. I'm so glad I'm not the only one. It's so funny. Carolee's like, they do not know what personal space is. That's for sure. It's so funny. It's like, but they must, they don't know time. You're going to have to listen to episode 5, because I give a big, big deal thing at the end of it about what I think hauntings are. Opening the door in the middle of the night so the light comes on. How about knocking on the door and no one's there? Really? Do you have to knock on the door or knock on the walls? They used to knock on my wall in the bedroom, and I'd be like, come on, stop. TV has its own life. Can they take over your body or mind? So Paula, in my, the way that I say no, okay, but not everybody subscribes to my belief system, because I have free will. So I won't allow that to happen. So it depends on your state. That's what I teach in Membership for Your Soul, about being really strong and empowered so that they can't do stuff like that. But I will tell you a story. So I have a couple of ex-boyfriends in spirit, and you're going to hear some of these stories in the podcast. I haven't told this one story. I'm saving because it's really funny. But this story, my ex-boyfriend committed suicide. And I was opening up to my gifts. I was working with Dee Wallace, who a lot of you know, Dee Wallace Stone. I think she just goes by Dee Wallace now. I can't remember her name, and I was in acting class with her, and she was working with the pendulum. She's really working with stuff. It was where I learned how to use the pendulum, which was great. And I could feel a spirit. This was before I knew that I was a medium. Everything was just opening up. And I was going to Trader Joe's and buying beer. I don't really drink beer. And I was drinking beer every night, and I could feel something attached to me. And I was super depressed, really depressed. And I went to Dee's class, and she used to put some of us on the stage and work with us. And somebody said, you got to put Marilyn on the stage. And I told her what was happening to me. And I said, I think this is my ex who committed suicide. And she did some work in pendulum, and she's like, yeah, it is. So I had to banish him from my house, from my life, from everything, because he was attaching to me. And I don't necessarily believe in attachments anymore, because I have such a strength about me that they can't do it. So he wasn't allowed around me for 5 years. And then my other ex, who he knew, who was in spirit too, he came through a lot more. He didn't do stuff like that to me. And I allowed Jay, was the one who was passed, to attach to me. I allowed him to start coming in after a while. But what I know from suicides is they are doing a lot of work on the other side, because it's very confusing to them when they get there about what happened, or they're still processing emotions. Remember, it's still consciousness. It's levels of consciousness. And it's also a time factor that I'm going to talk about in episode 5 very briefly. And he was still working through that, and he was using me to work through it. And once Dee did that work with me, I stopped drinking beer. I didn't have any interest in beer. Now, I like beer every now and then, but I was drinking it like nonstop. When I think my light would just come on and off by itself, done it for 20 minutes. Yeah. So totally, Robert. One night, I think it was about midnight, my light would just come on and off. I tell this story in my podcast. That's so go to my podcast, go on to podcast, put podcast in, or you can find it on Stitcher, Apple. It's called Who Can It Be Now? And you can hear this story is going to come out on Thursday about my hauntings. But yeah, and the reason why they do that, Robert, is because I believe that a lot of us have these gifts and we just didn't know it, for whatever reason. I have a question. I've seen a couple of mediums. Why can't a medium tell you the names of the spirits they're speaking to? Well, that's a really, really good question, Tina. I used to get names, so I don't know why they can't tell you. Sometimes what I think happens is if a deceased loved one comes in for me, they will usually give me the name or the first letter of the name. That's a clarifying fact that I am, in fact, speaking to your father. Okay. So in the beginning of my work, names were spot on for me. And then it kind of got spotty. And I think what happens there is our mind chatter gets in a little bit of the way. So I think maybe the mediums are getting it, or they're not really sure, or they may just get an initial. Like, I've got an F. Do you have a Frank or a Fran? Sometimes I'll get the name, but it's a name I don't know. Like Gilda would never be in my vocabulary, but I would get like a Jill or a Jerry, and it could be a Gilda. So I think if the messages are strong enough, you can trust the messages if they're not getting the name. I think a lot of people go to readings and put the mediums to task too. And if you're putting a medium to task and you're sitting there like this, or you have that energy about you, you're really not lending space to the openness of the medium. You're not really supporting them. Like when I don't go for readings anymore, I don't need to. But if I go for a reading, I did it like 2 years ago. There was like a tarot reader in the park. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this for fun. She was horrible. And I'll tell you why she was horrible in a second. But I would never go without an open energy. They don't know what I do. I'm not going to tell them, but I want to really support their space. So that's important to me. The reason why she wasn't good is she didn't give information. She was like, she pulled a card. I know the cards really well. I have a whole class on it, Soulful Tarot. And I can't remember what the card was, but say it was like 4 of swords. Let's do 3 of swords because that's in my head. She'd be like, yeah, the swords are going through the heart. You have a heartache. And I'd be like, yeah, and it was like, I think she wanted more money or something. And I'm like, no, you don't do that. I just paid $10 for a 1-question reading. You don't do that. I went into membership and told them. A couple of minutes, wreak havoc on electronics. Yes. The last year I worked in my pet store, there was something that pushed me down several times. That's not good, Jackie. One time I actually broke my elbow. I've heard of these stories happening. Luckily, they've never happened to me, but I do want you to know that I subscribe to free will. So I always work with Archangel Michael. I think he's phenomenal. Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Raphael, to keep yourself safe. So I'm sorry that happened to you. I've heard about these things happening. I don't deny that they can happen. But it's also about an energy that we have. There's a weakness inside of us that's attracting that energy. So you really want to try to build up the strength inside of you so you can't allow that to happen. So, but I'm sorry, sweetie. Not that I'm not saying you allowed it. I'm just saying that I want to give you the empowerment that doesn't have to happen to you again. Yeah. They love like electronic. Come on. How many times like we could be on calls and it's like so much energy, a Zoom call. And it's like, all right, we would ground the lines. When it used to be phone lines, on Instant Teleseminar, we'd ground the lines so that they wouldn't do that. It'd be great. Have woken up lots of times to see someone watching me. It felt intrusive. I told them to stop and go away, and it doesn't happen anymore. Good for you. Yeah. Yeah. It's, I always feel like I didn't like that stuff either, and I had to stop it. I think in episode 4, you hear about the eggs and what I had to do to get them to stop. So definitely podcast. You want to hear my stories? I'll tell you episode 2, it goes a little too long, and I teach throughout it. I try to teach throughout it. So it's good that you told it to leave because it has no right to do it. See, Lily? She says, I see faces in everything all the time. Yeah. So one time on my ceiling, there was that, what's that man with the flute? It's like a Native American symbol with the feathers and the flute. You guys are going to know what it is because I have no words today. I've been on meeting calls since 11 to 2:30, and I could not find my words in my meetings. I'm like, it's not there. So that thing was dancing on my ceiling like crazy. It was really, really interesting. Really interesting. So I love that. Amy says, the first time I experienced something, I was in the basement, and it sounded like someone was moving all the furniture in the dining room. I came upstairs and felt scared. No one was around, and we lived next to a graveyard. I have a story. I have to remember my stories, but I love that. I was walking the dogs on a hike, and there's a graveyard. And I have to remember this now. Oh, I'm going to come up. My membership should remember this story. So I was walking in the graveyard, and I was like, you know what? I saw a soldier. I saw a soldier standing in front of me. Now, graveyard, right? There's probably a soldier. And then next to him, next to the soldier, I heard the name Trudy. It was a very strange name. It was like Trudy. I can't remember the name, what it was. So I was like, okay, there's obviously a soldier thing here. And there's somebody named Trudy. And I looked at some of the gravestones and I didn't see it. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm off. I don't know. Maybe I'm off. So I went down the path and then I returned back. And I saw the soldier again, and I saw the name Trudy. And I looked to the left, and there was this whole tombstone decorated for this general. And then right next to it was a tombstone with the name Trudy. And I was like, yeah, baby, it's on. It's on. Because I shut the door for a while with deceased loved ones because I felt that I talk about this in episode 4. I just felt that there was a lot of like nonsense out there about all these mediums came up at the same time, and I don't care about that shit, who cares? But it was like a lot of like, if you're not talking to deceased people, then you're not a medium. And I was like, get the fuck out of my face. And I just like, you know what, you can have it. So, but now I'm opening up that stuff again because it's really, really fun. I can't wear a watch either, Lisa. I just cannot wear a watch. Yes, on Seeing Faces. Wow, I'm so glad so many of you have seen that. Pay attention to it. It's a part of scrying, scrying, scrying. So that's crystal ball reading, right? So when you're studying, I was never good at that. You could do it with a glass bowl of water on a black cloth, and I would practice, and you start seeing a little bit of smoke, and then you're supposed to be able to see visions. But I tried that once with that. I never had a crystal ball. I can see it. So that's a part of scrying. Faces, places, tunnels, and tiles. Well, but wow, a lot of you. All right. So everybody gets this. Cool, cool, cool. What about faces and crystals? That would definitely be a sense of scrying and clairvoyancy for sure. Now, the thing is what you want to do. So Emily, a lot of people are here in my membership program, so they know it. What you want to do with that is when you see it, you want to tap into the other clairs and get more information. So when I first started reading, I would go into a reading and my guides would give me a symbol. Like I'd be in a reading and I'd get a symbol, say I got a tissue box. And they wouldn't tell me anything else. And then I'd maybe say to the person, tissue box? And they'd be like, no. And so I said to my guides, great, you're giving me all these symbols in the readings, but you got to tell me what they mean too. You can't just give me the symbol. So we made a pact, right? That they were either going to tell me what it meant, or I would go to the person. And if they didn't tell me what it meant, I knew it was for the person. I knew that particular symbol was for them. And usually, so what would happen is I'd be in a reading, and this story is on my podcast, and I was reading this girl, and I was talking to her deceased mother. And then at the end of the reading, the mother gave me a banana. And I knew there was no symbol message for me about the banana. It didn't mean anything to me to deliver the message. And I was like, okay, I got to give her this banana now. I really don't want to tell her about the banana. And I was like, okay, she just handed me a banana. And she burst out laughing. And she's like, my mother was always trying to give me bananas when I left the house. So you always want to go further into the messages. Like, why am I seeing that face? What does that face want me to know? Do I hear anything? Do I feel anything? Do I know anything? So it's really, really important. Okay, Natalie Holloway. Exactly. That's who it is. I am going to, so my team knows I've been working so much, but I'm starting to slow down a bit so that I could go to these journals. and start telling you more of these stories and teaching you through these stories. So put in podcasts so you could get my podcast, and please subscribe, share, rate that you like it. Because if you don't, I'm going to send all the ghosts to haunt your ass. So make sure you do that. And that's it. I'm going to take a few more questions and I'm going to go. My son is a little girl that watches him wash dishes. And when he was in his teens, he's seen a shadow man dressed like the Undertaker. So it's so interesting to me, Susan, that while I'm washing dishes too, anybody else have this experience that the ghosts, I don't know why that is. Is it because we're in a mindless thing? So it's almost like a meditative state, but they're always there when I'm washing dishes too. And it's fascinating to me that you bring that up. Shadow Man is interesting, dressed like the Undertaker. Yeah, I think we can tap into a lot of different things. Remember, there's a lot of consciousness out there too, a lot of fear consciousness. So we can tap into things like that as well. All right. Just so I know, the orbs are like crazy today. Ring the doorbell in the middle of the night. Yep. All right. Okay. So write in podcast, and you're going to get my episode about my first haunting. One of my first hauntings. It's not really my first haunting, but one of my first hauntings. And I can't wait to hear the story. It's a really, really good story. It's got some humor in it. And I do give away a secret at the end about what I think this is all about. So I just want to see what Chrissy says. Chrissy said, the day my brother died, first of all, I'm sorry your brother died. That night, he knocked on the door all night. I've seen him so many times that night, standing at the door, looking out the window. He knocked several days after until late one night. I went outside and just sat and talked to him. Aw, it stopped after that. I'm so glad that you went out there, Chrissy, and talked to him. I'm so, so glad. That's great. Inside, he felt really sad and heavy. Yeah, this is interesting. So Paula, let me get this girl quick for you. So Paula said she did a reading the other night. He felt really sad and heavy, right side, male or female. So for me, the right side is usually female, and the left side is usually male. So if somebody comes into the left, I know it's the paternal side of the family. If someone comes into the right, it's usually maternal side for me. Yeah, so you said the left side is feminine. Yeah, you got it too. So, that's your language, that's your instrument, but that is what they taught me too. The woman who died was on the left side. Her energy was bright. I did a card reading for her family the day before. I asked if she'd like to pass a message through the oracle cards. The woman I sent the reading to said the cards really resonate and accompanying spirits don't try to come into me. Yeah, no, spirits aren't allowed to come into me either. No, not at all. So MK, this is such a great question. She said, I feel my dad came to me. It startled me, but I couldn't communicate with him. So I said, love you, Dad. Leave. It hurts my heart if it feels like I was being mean. So MK, I do this work, right? And I knew my dad was dying, and I was sleeping, and he came to me. And I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with the energy. I couldn't deal with the emotions. I couldn't deal with communicating with him. So I sent him away. And then I got the call the next morning that he passed. So, and then I think like the day after that or 2 days after, he came in again. And I still wasn't ready to deal with him. And I feel like it's such an intimate relationship when you speak to spirit. It's a different experience than the physical. It's so intimate. It's so vulnerable. It's so raw. And especially when it's somebody you had such an incredible relationship with to begin with, or not an incredible. My father and I, we had off and on relationship, but I loved him. And I just couldn't deal with the intimacy of that moment and the pain and the feeling. And I had to process my own emotions of his passing before I could deal with communicating with him. So I sent him away too. I didn't, the next morning I have a picture. It was actually put it in membership. I was taking pictures of this incredible light where there's normally a waterfall. And I try to post the picture on my business page. And just at that moment, there's no cell service on one of the hikes I go to. Just at that moment, my brother was texting me to say that he found out he died. So I know that that was my father. So you have to forgive yourself through this process because you're human and you're learning how to do it. All right. I'm going to go and I will have, thank you, more stories for you. But the most important thing, yeah, no, this seems to be lights everywhere, Sherry. I'm going to take it. Woohoo! I'm really tired. I wasn't this morning. I had a great night's sleep. Wait till we start talking about dreams and all the creepy stuff there. But for some reason, I'm tired. I think it's all the energy is going on as we're talking in Soul Finder Academy. We're transmuting a lot of the energy that's happening. And there's been seems to be a lot of orbs. So hello, Gentry. She says, I've seen my grandfather 2 times, child 9 years old, and then once as an adult when I was pregnant with my first child. Yep. So there you go. Podcast. The new one comes out, the 5th episode, which is about my haunting, one of my hauntings that I lived. And it's on Thursday. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share if you like it. Rate it only if you like it. Otherwise, I'm telling you, I'm going to send you, like, if you give me a bad rating, I have all these ghosts that are going to come haunt you. I'm kidding. And then also download it. And there's already 4 there, so you can catch up and binge. And that's it. So you can put podcast in and you will find out. Actually, I think we should let people know when it comes out on Thursday through ManyChat. All right, guys. So nice seeing all of you. I will see you soon. Thank you so much for putting up with my little tiredness today. This was fun. I'm really glad the clairvoyant message of seeing things in physical objects came through. And so many of you had that experience. So that's really, really cool. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.